You know, we've all seen a million crime shows on TV, right? The dramatic arrests, the intense courtroom battles. But what's really going on behind all that? It's this incredible story of two totally different worlds that have to work together. So let's dive in and really unpack what it means to understand crime.
Okay, first up, a quick question that honestly trips up almost everybody. You hear these words, robbery, burglary, larceny, thrown around all the time, sometimes for the same thing. But in the eyes of the law, they are completely different. Any idea what makes them so distinct?
All right, here's the breakdown. Robbery is all about using force, or the threat of force against a person. Think your money or your life. Burglary, on the other hand, is about illegally entering a place with the plan to commit a crime. And larceny? Well, that's just a fancy word for theft, taking stuff without any force or breaking in. See, it's all in the details. But just getting the definitions right is only the beginning. If you really want to get a handle on crime, you have to look at it from two different angles. First, there's how we react to it. We'll call that the system. And second, there's the question of why it even happens, and that's the study.
So let's start with the system. This is the part we all kind of know from movies and the news. It's the huge, complicated machine that society has built to deal with crime after it's already happened.
The official name for it is, of course, criminal justice, and it's got a few big goals. Keep society in order, scare people away from committing future crimes, and, well, punish the ones who break the rules anyway. It's basically society's official response plan.
Now take a look at this chart. I know, it looks like a crazy tangled mess, and that's exactly the point. It shows the journey of a single crime through the justice system. The big takeaway here isn't every little box, but the fact that it's not a straight line at all. There are dozens of different paths and outcomes. It just goes to show how incredibly complex this whole system really is.
To make sense of that crazy chart, you can really just boil the whole system down to three main pillars. First up is policing. They do the investigating and the arresting. Then you've got adjudication, which is the courts, the judges, and the trials that decide who's guilty. And finally, there's corrections. Think prisons, probation, and parole, which is all about handling the punishment.
Okay, let's switch gears and look at the other side of the coin, the study. This part isn't about reacting to crime, it's about trying to get ahead of it by asking that one huge question: why? Why do people do these things in the first place?
And that brings us to the field of criminology. So if criminal justice is the hands-on system of practices, criminology is the science behind it. It's this deep dive into sociology, psychology, and even biology to figure out the root causes of crime.
Early on, two big ideas about this emerged. The first is called the classical school. The thinking here is pretty straightforward. People have free will. Committing a crime is a rational decision. A person literally weighs the pros, what they'll get from the crime, against the cons, the risk of getting caught and punished.
And thinkers like this guy, Cesare Beccaria, were central to this idea. He basically argued that to stop crime, the punishment just needs to be bad enough to outweigh the reward. It has to be swift, it has to be certain, and the punishment should fit the crime. Simple math, right?
But then, a completely different school of thought came along and basically turned that whole idea upside down. This was the positivist school. It said, hold on, maybe it's not a choice. They argued that criminal behavior is actually caused by things outside of a person's control, like their biology, their upbringing, or the neighborhood they grew up. So right there, you have this huge split in thinking. Is crime a rational choice made with free will, or are people pushed into it by forces they can't control? And this isn't just some old philosophical debate. It shapes everything today. A free will view might lead to policies like harsh, mandatory sentences, while a predisposition view might lead to more focus on rehabilitation and social programs.
So where do these two big ideas, the system and the study, actually meet? Well, the best place to see them come together is in a criminal investigation. This is where the practical hunt for a criminal gets a huge boost from the theoretical understanding of why they do what they do.
When you see investigators at a crime scene, they're not just bagging up random stuff. They're collecting pieces of a story. Every single piece of evidence helps them figure out what happened. And more importantly, it helps them understand the kind of person they're looking for.
And they're working with all kinds of evidence. Think of it like a giant puzzle. Direct evidence, like an eyewitness, is like finding a corner piece. It gives you a solid place to start. But most of the time, a case is built from all the little things, circumstantial stuff, trace evidence, like a single hair or a fiber from a shirt. Each tiny piece helps build out that full picture.
And this is where the study becomes a detective's best friend. They start looking for a modus operandi, or an MO.
That's a criminal's unique pattern, their signature way of doing things. You see, understanding how they commit the crime gives you a massive clue into their psychology, the why, which can lead you right to who they are.
All of this brings us to a pretty wild, mind-bending question about where we're headed. As our system gets smarter and our study of criminal behavior gets more and more predictive, what if we could stop crimes before they even happen?
The science fiction writer Philip K. Dick actually came up with a word for this: pre-crime. It's the idea of stopping and punishing people not for a crime they've committed, but for one that some system predicts they will commit in the future. And if that sounds a little bit familiar, yeah, it's the whole idea behind the movie Minority Report. Remember that? A special police unit arrests murderers before they can kill anyone, all based on the visions of these psychic precogs.
This line from the original story just hits you right in the gut, doesn't it? It perfectly sums up the massive ethical problem here. How can you have a just society that punishes someone who hasn't actually done anything wrong yet? It goes against everything we think we know about justice.
And really, that's what this all comes down to. We've gone from simple crime definitions to the huge machinery of the justice system and the deep science of human behavior. But as those two worlds get closer and more powerful, we are left with this one giant question for our future. Where do we draw the line?